My name is Dr. Patricia Murphy, and I am the Ecclesiastical Endorser and National Coordinator for Chaplains, Pastoral Counselors, Specialized Ministers, and the National Network for American Baptist Professionals. Today, I'm joined here with the Dr. Jessica Young Brown, who serves as the Assistant Professor of Counseling and Practical Theology at the Samuel D. Witt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University. Dr. Jessica Brown Young is also a licensed clinical psychologist in private practice. She is also the author of the recently released new book entitled Making Space at the Well and mental health and the church. I am so excited that Dr. Jessica Brown Young has made some time out in her afternoon to join me today. And Dr. Brown Young Brown, I've invited you here today to discuss some of the current issues that we are facing during during this COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, you, like me, have heard so many different conversations, whether it's on Facebook Live, YouTube, all kinds of social media. Everyone is talking about COVID-19 in the academy as well as in the church. But one of the things that I have not heard a lot of conversation around is the young people. So I just wanted to ask you today, what do you think about the young people? How can we keep them encouraged, especially the ones who were in middle school looking forward to going into high school, and those who are in high school who are looking forward to their prom and everything that comes with senior life? And so can you just give some feedback on that?
Yeah, I think it's a good point that this pandemic is affecting all of us, but it's especially the case for young people whose whole routine has been adjusted. Everyone from the elementary school kids all the way to high schoolers and college students. And you think about, as you said, people who are missing commencement exercises, who didn't get to say goodbye to teachers and friends that they really love and care about. And I think one of the most important things we can do for folks in that category is to really just provide a place of safety and security for them to express their feelings. So much of what we as adults do sometimes revolves around kind of trying to keep things as normal as possible. And really, what kids need is a place to say, this is not okay. I miss my friends. I don't know what to do. And so I think as much as we can just really be honest about those experiences and allow them to the space truly to grieve what was lost. And that's aside from the fact that there's real uncertainty and a sense of fear
Yes.
about what's going to happen. Is my family member going to get sick? Is something going to happen to someone I love? Right. And so we've really just got to find spaces to have those conversations. We don't give young people and kids in particular enough
Yes.
credit for how powerful their experiences can be and how much they are able to talk about those experiences if we simply give them the opportunity to do it. So as adults, we don't have to have it all figured out. Sometimes it's just holding the space of saying, look, we're all scared, we're all concerned, we don't know what's going to happen. Let's just talk about it and make space for that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And then, as you were talking, I was thinking about the college students who mid-semester, they came home for
Yeah.
spring break or they were looking forward, and then some of them who actually were doing spring break in Miami. But
Hmm.
nevertheless, after spring break was over, the universities, the seminaries, the colleges, they said, oh, well, don't come back. Come and
Right.
get your stuff today. We're closing down the campuses. So now you have these college students who have been living in freedom, as they would say, and now they're back home with their parents. So I want to know who is going more crazy, the parents or the students being home with their parents. So how can we help them
you
balance
know,
it out?
The one of the big things I think is so important, and I talk about this in my clinical practice anyway, but especially now, is
Yes,
getting really creative about how we can set boundaries when we're all in the house together, right?
yes,
And so for my family, that's looked like being intentional about time that we spend together, but also being intentional about time that we're going to take to kind of go to our separate corners, right? So,
yes,
what are the rules of engagement right now while we're all here together? You This is the time that you can have that you can do whatever you want to do. This is the time that we all have that we're going to sit down and talk about things. We're going to extend grace for if somebody's irritable or frustrated or whatever. We're going to go
Yes.
outside when we can, you know. And so I think so much of, I've been telling my clients for the past 3 weeks,
Yes.
none of us have lived through a world pandemic before in this way. We don't know what to do, but we do know how to try to maintain our relationships by communicating and
Yes.
playing it by ear. You know, we don't have to do things the same way every week or even every day, but can we as a family decide what works best for each other? And can we listen to each other when we say there's a particular request that we need? Even if it's something as simple as, look, I love y'all, but I just need to sit in this room by myself for an hour.
Yes. Yes.
Or somebody in the family saying, my son is 4, and so he's great at independent play, but lately sometimes he's just been like, I don't want to be in this room by myself, right? And so even if
Yes.
one of us isn't playing with him, we can do him the courtesy of sitting in the room with him because he needs to be with someone,
Yes.
right? And so I think we can set up our families in such a way where we can just say what we need and try to respect those needs as much as possible, because it is a hard time for everybody. And especially for those college students who have been used to a certain level of independence,
Yes.
it takes some navigation, right? With, okay,
Yes.
am I an adult? Am I a kid? What are the rules around that? And so, you know, parents and those students might have to sit down and just say, okay, what are the places where you can make some independent decisions, right? There's a pandemic outside, so you can't run around and do whatever you want. But
Yes.
here are the places where you can have some freedom, where I do respect your autonomy. Here are the private spaces that you can have in our home. You know, those kinds of things. It We can't move the world around, but small concessions can make a big difference for people in those kinds of situations. And with, you know, the other thing college students are dealing with is they had to leave campus, but class
Yes.
didn't stop.
That's right.
So now we're moving to these online learning modules. And, you know, I teach college. And so a part of what we've been navigating is all of us as professors don't have the same level of expertise around
Yes.
delivering that online education. And so what I've been saying is we are not in proximity, but we are still in community. And so
Yes.
my primary concern for all of my students is that their mental and physical health is taken care of. If that feels stable, then we can talk about class. But we're not going to stress out about class. I'm not going to be unnecessarily difficult. I'm going to extend grace whenever I can. And my hope is that my students do the same for themselves, because there's only so much any of us can manage in this moment.
Yes, and I wish you would have had this conversation with your neighbor over in Lynchburg, Virginia. I'm not going to say the name of the particular university, but I'm quite sure you know what I'm talking about. And even
Mhm.
having said that, and I do appreciate the fact that you are already preparing your students for the fact that they may not be going back to traditional class time as they know it on those campuses, even as soon and as early as for the summer semester, maybe even fall.
Maybe
So
even
I have
fall.
been
Yeah.
hearing, and this is the buzz that I have been hearing, that a lot of seminaries have already, and colleges and universities have said, okay, there is no returning to the campuses for summer. There is, and we're not even sure about September. So again, I do appreciate and value the fact that you will keep reinforcing this into the minds and the ears of your students. And I pray that whoever else in academia listens to this conversation, that they will consider doing the same thing, because these kids do not know what tomorrow is going to bring. As a matter of fact, none of us do.
None of us know.
Yes. And so I think it's important for them to really start thinking about what is it going to look like? What does additional continuing learning looks like for them moving forward, even as early as the summer?
Right.
And having even said that, I just want to shift it a little bit, because as you were talking about the family, one of the other areas and people that I believe has been missing is the single parent with no other adult in the house.
Yes.
So could you imagine, what can we say to encourage that mother and or father or couple, which well, actually I should say mother or father, or whichever way, this parent, the single parent,
Hmm.
who is raising small children with no adults with them during this pandemic?
Yeah, you know, I think that's a really, you know, being a single parent, period, is challenging. Raising
Yes.
small children, period, is challenging. Having two of those things at the same time when you're really not supposed to leave your house
Yes.
is especially challenging. And so I think for small kids, the key is routine and trying to stay on a schedule as much as you can. That's actually the case for all
Yes.
human beings, but especially little human beings, because they really need a schedule. And so, if nothing else, I would encourage those parents to be really vigilant about sleep times so they can get a little bit of a break, right? So, nap
Yes.
times and bedtime, make it a routine and stick to it every day because you do need your own personal downtime, right? I
Yes.
think the other thing you can do is try to have some structure so that the day becomes predictable. So we wake up, we have breakfast at a certain time, we have free play for a period, we watch a YouTube video, whatever the case may be, to try to keep that schedule regular. Because another thing that's really important, especially when you're talking about small children,
Yes.
is they are not as able to communicate what's going on with them, but they still
Yes.
feel their feelings as intensely. And so, in a period like this where we have all this stress and anxiety, and parent is probably stressed too, what we
Yes.
see is kids acting out. And they're
Yes.
not doing it to try to be difficult. They're doing it because they have feelings that they don't know how to talk about, right? But as a parent, when you are kind of at the end of your rope, you're less likely to be able to manage that well. Um,
Yes.
and so I think this is also a time for us to get really creative with technology. If you
Yes.
don't have anybody close by, but you do have family that you can connect with, call up a grandparent or an auntie or an uncle and set up that FaceTime or video chat call, right? So the
Yes.
kid can talk to another adult, and so you can talk to another adult. Or
Yes.
have social time where you're able to connect virtually with your support system. If nothing else, but just to say, oh, this was a really hard day, right? Because I think
Yes.
we all need that time to just connect with other people. And one of the biggest challenges of this moment is that those connections aren't happening by accident anymore. Every connection has to be planned out and intentional because we're not running into each other socially,
That's
right? And so
right.
we need to be thoughtful about, okay, what are the things I need to do to care for myself? Is it exercise? Is it making sure I get enough sleep?
Yes.
Is it making sure I have really good food that we enjoy and we're going to have fun preparing and eating together? Are there friends I need to contact and reach out to? And so, even planning out those care activities for the week can help because I know, okay, if Tuesday was a bad day, Wednesday I have a video chat date with some friends. And so I know I'll be better after that. So those kinds of things can help. It doesn't make the stress go away, certainly, but it makes it more manageable and
Yes.
allows us to get to a place where we feel like we're on stable footing, which is really important.
And it's interesting that when I was listening to you talk about how to be intentional about connecting with our friends and family on FaceTime or Zoom.
Hmm.
So one of the things that has been taking off is the birthday parties
Yes.
on Zoom. I went to my first lady, pastor's wife in New York City's birthday party last night, and so this is another way of helping people who have significant celebration dates
Hmm.
continue to honor those dates, because I have a birthday coming up too and I'm over here thinking, how could I be creative?
Right.
But even, let's say, for the ones who are celebrating anniversaries, you're married, so what would you and your husband do for anniversary celebration time? Maybe you're a couple who would normally go away. So, how can we encourage these couples who've been now sheltered in for 7 weeks, still maintain the sanctimony of what it means to be
Right.
married in a relationship?
Right.
What
I
can you
was
say to
joking with
that?
my I was joking with my husband just this morning that we definitely are a good match because we actually still like each other after being quarantined for 2 months. I think there's a creativity that we can use in this
Yes.
moment to make the ordinary special, right? And so, yeah, we can't go out for a date, but we can, after bedtime, sit down and do something really intentional together, right?
Yes.
Or, sit at the table and have dinner and not have phones, not have the TV on, just enjoy each other or spend time with each other. Play silly games where you ask each other questions that you haven't asked, and so I think those kinds of things can really help to keep couples on good footing. I think,
Yes.
I would say one of the gifts and challenges of this moment is that when you're in the house together, everything comes up, right? All the skeletons come out of the closet,
Yes.
all the dust comes up out of the rugs, like you, it's there in front of you.
Yes.
And with all the things we do to keep ourselves busy, to occupy our time, have kind of fallen away. And so there's a gift
Yes.
in really having the time and space to confront those things. I think it's
Yes.
also important to remember why we got into these relationships in the first place, right?
Yes.
And for
Yes.
some of us, it's kind of a return to the basics of I now have a reminder that I don't want to lose sight of the gift that I
Yes.
have in my family, and to really honor that, even if at times it is a challenge. Now,
Yes.
I think there's another side of that coin. What I was just talking about is with healthy relationships. There's
Yes.
another side of that coin that in periods like this, if there are relationships where there's interpersonal violence, those
Yes.
occurrences are going to be on the rise in times like this because people are in
Yes.
close quarters. And so for folks who are in those unhealthy or abusive relationships, it goes back to being really intentional about seeking out social support and
Yes.
having an outlet outside of that unsafe environment to try to get support, because it can be, like I said, the dust and the skeletons come out, right? Whether they're
Yes.
manageable or
Yes.
not. And so I think it's important to be able to hold both of those things, that for some of us, this can be a time to reconnect and enjoy each other. For other families, it will be a time of high conflict, and people really need to think creatively about how they can seek support.
And even in that, I don't want to miss out on the single people.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm not married. So what happens to how can you keep them in, these single people encouraged, those who were on Black Christian People Meet or Black People
Yeah.
Meet or somebody People Meet,
Hmm.
um, Zoom, what is that? Harmony or one of those
eHarmony, right?
eHarmony, one of those dating sites, and right in the middle. So now you're single, you see yourself just flipping past the pictures, like I don't know. So what can we say to the singles that want that type of companionship during these times?
Sure. So I'll say, again, think about what are the creative ways that you can connect with people, right? The internet is still open, the apps are
Yes.
still open, right? And so you can't meet people, but you can talk to people, you can have those virtual dates. There was this really cute video going around on Instagram of people having a virtual date.
Oh yes, yes,
Like
I did see something
it
like that.
was
Yes.
Common and Tiffany Haddish having a virtual date. So,
Yes.
I think you can do those kinds of things. I think this is a really great time, especially for those, there's a difference between people who are kind of casually dating versus
Yes.
people who are really seeking companionship versus people who
Yes.
are really happily single and want to stay single, right? And so
Yes.
for any of those people, whatever category you fall into, there's also an opportunity to really spend some time in introspection and reflection, and to
Yes.
think about, what are my values? What do I want in my life? What are the activities I'm engaging in to try to live into that? And
Yes.
what are my hopes? Like whenever outside opens up and I can
Yes.
get out of my house, what do I want my life to look like? I mean, there's
Right.
an opportunity in this moment to really dream
Yeah.
about what the future will look like. And I think that can be a great way to kind of use all this pent up energy that we have too.
Yes. So don't you wouldn't suggest to call an ex-boyfriend or
I
girlfriend?
mean, here's what I'll say. There's
Yes.
typically a reason why you are no longer partnered with that person. And I
Exactly.
invite you to just keep that front of mind.
I just wanted to throw that in for somebody that might be tempted to call the ex.
You might need to leave the ex alone. Maybe.
Thank you. That's so encouraging for me. You don't know, you just cannot imagine. So I just want to shift this just a little bit, and this will probably might be one of the final questions, but we'll have to catch up again a little later. But one
Okay.
of the other most serious things that I wanted to ask you about was grief.
Yeah.
Grief, grief, and grief. What has been interesting to me is there has been a cry in Rama, if you will, for people who are grieving heavily.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I'm wondering, right? We're not shy to what grief looks like because everybody has had some level of grief and loss in their lives at some point in time. But I'm wondering if this pandemic is compounding that grief with a little bit of that trauma from
Sure.
with all this. So, yeah, open that up for me.
Sure. So I think the first thing to acknowledge is that there's so many different levels of grief
Yes.
happening all at the same time. So on one level, you have people who are actually losing friends and family members to this virus, right? Or people who are losing friends and family members, even if it's not a direct result of the virus, but during a time where we cannot gather the way we normally gather to celebrate people's lives. And so there's the loss of the person we love, and then the loss of a very important experience of emotional release and reflection on the person we lost. And I
Yes.
think we have yet to understand the emotional cost for those of us who have lost friends and family members during this time and have not been able to celebrate their lives in the way we normally
Yes.
do. And so I think that piece is so important. I think it will end up prolonging and complicating the grieving process
Yes.
in a way that we probably don't realize yet.
And even to further add to that, what about the persons who have lost income, right?
Right.
And
So lost
things that,
income, lost
yes,
community, lost a
yes,
routine, lost a
yes,
celebration, right? There's so many
yes,
different losses. Just,
yes,
I mean, whoever thought we would get to the point where there are people who are legitimately frightened to go to the grocery store and get the food they need because they're
yes.
worried that they could come home with some virus that could be deadly to someone in their family,
That's
right?
right.
That's a trauma and it shifts the way we've done everything. Um, and so I think one of the ways it's affecting us, even those of us who are, for all intents and purposes, safe,
Yes.
secure, fed, still being paid, there's this fatigue and overwhelm that
Mm-hmm.
many of us are experiencing that kind of sits in our bodies.
Yes.
And, so I've had so many people say, I'm just not as productive, or I'm not sleeping well, or I feel irritable. I'm just all over the place. I can't concentrate. And my response is always, we're going through a trauma, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
a part of what we need to do is just acknowledge this is hard. It's not okay.
Yes.
This is not the way we normally do things. And we don't have to pretend that we are okay, even if we are physically safe. We don't have to pretend that this is okay, right? And as you said, you have people who have lost their income, have lost their way of
Yes.
life, don't know where their next meal is coming from. I mean,
Yes.
it really is a tragedy. It's a tragedy and it's incredibly frightening. And, from a mental health perspective, the longer we try to pretend or to keep those things in as opposed to
Yes.
expressing them, we compound the problem and we make it more difficult. And so the first thing we can do is to just make space for people to talk about it. I think the second thing we need to do, and my family has tried to be thoughtful about this too, is that those of us who are in a place of privilege in this moment
Mm-hmm.
really need to think about what are the ways we can support people in our communities who might not have the resources we have. Whether
Yes.
that's donating meals, if I'm going to buy something, I'm going to buy it from a locally owned business. It's, continuing to support community organizations that are feeding people or paying rent or whatever the case may be. And so I think as much of that as we can do, not only is it a way to support people we're in community with, but it's
Yes.
also a way to feel like we're doing something in a world that feels so out of our control and so unpredictable. And that can be a supportive thing for people on kind of both sides of that equation.
Yes. And so, and having said that, and we're talking about grief and managing that and putting good support systems in place, what about those persons who really don't know how to do that and they
Hmm.
suffer with addictions? So the person who already had an addiction before all of this came through,
Hmm.
what can we do to save the person who have whatever addiction it is? It could be shopping, drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography, all types
Hmm.
of addictions. How can we, what good advice can you give to them in this seasons that these addictions don't get out of control?
Sure. The when I'm working with folks with addictions, one of the first things I do before we
Mhm.
try to take away their coping skill, because that's what it
Yes,
is, right? An addiction
yes,
is a coping
yes,
skill. It's not some moral failing. But one of the first things we do is to give people options. And so I
yes,
would say to folks in those categories, in addition to that thing that's your go to, try to come up with two or three other things that you can do when you're feeling bad. Can you
yes,
call a friend? Can you go for a walk? Can you do something creative? Can you read a book? Right? And it's not that we're taking that option off the table, but we
yes,
want to have more possibilities for how you can cope when you feel bad. Because during times like this, you're feeling bad a lot, and you don't want that to be the only option you have. So that's the first thing I would say, is to just
yes,
diversify those coping skills as much as you can. And the beauty of the internet, right, is that there's so many online resources. There are therapists providing teletherapy,
yes.
our online support groups, right? Try everything you can try. There's no harm in trying it, because you never know if you'll find it helpful.
Yes, I had a friend that called me the other night. She has a shopping addiction, and she said the worst thing in the world for her was being home with the internet
Yeah.
because she finds herself on, Macy's and, whatever store keeps sending her these coupons, 30% off, 70% off. And so
Hmm.
she's really having a struggle with maintaining this shopping addiction that
Yeah.
she has. So I'm definitely going to give her your suggestion.
Yeah,
Um,
and what she might have to do is put her phone and her computer in a room, close the door, and go and do something else for a few hours, right? Limit that
yes.
access to it so that you can try to give yourself time to engage those other coping skills.
Now, I did say friend. It really is a friend and not me because most people tell counselor
I have a friend,
I have a
wink,
friend, but
wink.
it is not. I promised, Dr. Jessica, it is not me with the problem. But anyway, I want to thank you so much. We're running out of time today, but I thank you so very much. And before we close out, is there anything else that you would like to say to the community? Any kind of words of encouragement that you could give them in this season of COVID-19 as we close out?
Sure. My encouragement is just to be kind to ourselves and others. We are all fighting a hard battle, but we can get through it together if we reach out for support and we try to take care of ourselves as much as possible.
Yes. Thank you so very much, Dr. Jessica Brown Young. And I'm keep saying your name backwards and forwards,
It's
different
okay. I
ways.
answer to all the names.
I want to thank you so very much. And again, thank you so much for your work that you've done in making space at the well. And for those of you who have not received Dr. Brown Young's book, I encourage you to get it. It's really a powerful book. And one of the things that I like is when I think about it is, what am I drinking
Yeah,
at this in this time and in this season of the COVID pandemic? Am I going to the well where there I can find all of the strength and the nutrients and the resources that I need in our risen
absolutely.
Savior? So God bless you. May heaven
Thank
continue to
you.
smile upon you and you stay well and you be blessed.
Thank you.